Some neighbors borrow sugar, others borrow peace of mind. On a quiet winter street, one man's warmth kept vanishing, log by log, night after night. He thought it was chance until he followed the footprints. What he discovered was betrayal, arrogance, and karma wrapped in glitter. When the HOA queen started stealing his firewood, he decided to give her something that would make the whole neighborhood remember her name, in blue. This is the story of how one quiet man turned the coldest winter into the hottest revenge. The cold nights and the vanishing firewood. The first frost of winter painted Maplewood Lane silver. Every house on the cul-de-sac glowed with orange warmth, except one. David's little cabin sat at the end of the street, wrapped in silence and cold. He had moved there for peace, away from the city noise, only to discover that the neighborhood's biggest disturbance came from the HOA president herself, Karen Meyer. David was the kind of man who believed in earning his comfort. He chopped every piece of firewood by hand, stacking it neatly against his shed, proud of his work. But then, something strange started happening. Each morning, the pile seemed smaller. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Maybe he'd used more logs than he remembered. But after several days, his woodpile was nearly half gone. He checked for animal tracks, maybe raccoons or kids playing around. But what he found instead chilled him. Footprints. Small, neat prints leading directly from his yard to Karen's perfectly manicured garden next door. That night, David stood at his frosty window, watching Karen's chimney. Thick, warm smoke danced upward while his own hearth remained dark. Inside, his daughter huddled under blankets, and his wife warmed her hands with a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The unfairness of it all burned deeper than any winter wind. The HOA Accusations. Determined to stop the theft, David went to the next HOA meeting, the same one Karen chaired every month. He waited patiently while she lectured others about mailboxes being half an inch too tall or lawns not regulation green. When it was his turn, he cleared his throat and said, "Someone's been stealing my firewood, and I believe it's coming from the yard next to mine." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips tightening into a fake smile. "David," she said sweetly, "are you accusing me? Because I think the real issue here is your messy woodpile violating HOA aesthetic standards." Laughter rippled through the room. David's face flushed. He tried to explain the footprints, the smoke, the disappearing logs, but Karen cut him off. "Maybe raccoons," she said with a smirk. "Or maybe your math's off. Either way, please fix the appearance of your yard. You'll be fined $100 if it's not addressed by next week." The meeting ended, and so did David's patience. His dignity was bruised. His wife tried to comfort him, but the sting of humiliation lingered. He realized Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor, she was a master manipulator. If he wanted justice, he'd need to be smarter than her. The brilliant setup. Over the next few days, David crafted a plan that was equal parts clever and poetic. He took a few hollowed logs from his workshop, old projects he'd once used for testing carving tools, and filled them with a special mix of bright blue dye and harmless glitter powder. It was safe, but impossible to clean easily. Then came the cameras, small, motion-activated ones hidden inside birdhouses and tree branches, perfectly aimed at his woodpile. Every movement, every step near his fence, would be captured. Late one evening, David restacked the pile, placing the special logs right on top, in easy reach for a thief. The rest he covered with a thin layer of frost, making it look untouched. As he stood back, watching the snow fall quietly around him, a small smile appeared on his face for the first time in weeks. "This time," he whispered, "let's see who freezes first." The blue explosion. The trap was set. Now came the waiting. At exactly 2:14 a.m., one of the hidden cameras blinked to life. Karen, bundled in her robe and slippers, crept through the snow like a shadow. She glanced over her shoulder once, then twice, before snatching up a few logs and hauling them away in a small wagon. Her breath puffed in clouds as she disappeared into the dark. Minutes later, her house lit up, not with warmth, but with chaos. The moment she threw one of David's hollow logs into her fireplace, A burst of blue powder exploded outward, covering her pristine white living room in a storm of glitter and color. Her couch, her rug, even her dog, all drenched in cobalt sparkles. The loud pop startled her so badly she stumbled backward, knocking over a vase. Her husband shouted from upstairs, panicking. Outside, neighbors peeked through curtains as the commotion grew. Karen ran outside in a frenzy, still covered in blue, screaming about sabotage and vandalism. But no one took her seriously. Someone even filmed her on their phone, laughing softly as she tried to wipe her face clean. The truth revealed. The next morning, David arrived at the emergency HOA meeting Karen had called. She stood at the front, still with faint traces of blue dye on her hands. Her voice trembled as she tried to twist the story. Someone planted a trap on my property. It could have been dangerous. David remained calm. He placed a small USB drive on the table and said quietly, "Then maybe we should see who planted it." The video played, every second of Karen sneaking into his yard, stealing the logs, loading her wagon. Gasps filled the room. Even her closest friends looked away. The board chair turned to her and said flatly, "Karen, this is theft. You've abused your position." Stripped of her HOA presidency, fined for damages, and publicly exposed, Karen had no words left. The power she'd wielded over everyone evaporated in an instant. As David left the meeting, one of the neighbors gave him a discreet thumbs up. That evening, for the first time all winter, his fireplace roared with warmth. His daughter giggled as she watched blue sparkles still lingering on the snow outside. David smiled and said softly, "Sometimes karma doesn't knock, it glows."